The young Apache woman rejected 100 warriors, but upon seeing the cattle herder, she whispered, "You are mine." The sun was just beginning to rise over the endless plains, painting the desert sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The wind moved gently through the tall grasses, carrying with it the scent of the earth and the distant mountains. In this vast and open land lived Naeli, a young Apache woman whose name was known across many tribes. She was strong, beautiful, and fearless, and from the moment she had grown into a young woman, she had captured the attention of many. Yet she had never allowed herself to be claimed, for her spirit was untamed, and her heart had yet to find a home. Naeli's village was small but proud. The people lived in harmony with the land, following the cycles of the seasons, hunting and gathering, and protecting their families with courage and determination. Life was not always easy, for the desert could be harsh and unforgiving, but the people had learned to endure and thrive. Naeli, in particular, was admired not only for her beauty but for her strength of character. She could ride a horse with skill, track animals across miles of terrain, and hunt with accuracy that rivaled even the finest warriors of the tribe. She was a mixture of grace and power, a young woman who carried herself with confidence and wisdom beyond her years. Over the years, warriors from neighboring tribes had come to her village, drawn by stories of her courage and beauty. They brought gifts, sang songs of admiration, and challenged each other to displays of strength and skill, all in the hope of earning her favor. Some were brave and bold, their weapons and armor gleaming in the sun. Others were clever and charming, speaking words meant to impress and win her heart. Yet Naeli rejected them all. She did not do this out of pride or cruelty. She simply knew her own worth, and she would not give her heart to anyone who did not match the fire within her. The stories of the warriors who had tried and failed spread across the plains. They spoke of her unwavering resolve, of the way she stood tall and unshaken, of the fiery gaze that could make even the bravest man hesitate. Some thought her too proud, too selective, but those who truly knew her understood that Naeli's choices were guided by something deeper than appearances or words. She was waiting, not for a warrior, not for a boastful man, but for someone who could walk beside her as an equal, someone who could see the world as she did, and who could respect her freedom and spirit. On the morning of the great gathering, the village was alive with activity. Smoke rose from cooking fires, children ran laughing through the dusty paths, and the elders prepared for the ceremonies that would celebrate a successful hunt. Warriors sharpened their weapons and practiced their routines, hoping to catch Naeli's attention. Some of the young women assisted with preparations, their hands busy with weaving and cooking, while others, like Naeli, observed from a distance, waiting for the right moment to step forward. Naeli stood on a small hill just beyond the main gathering area, her long hair falling over her shoulders, catching the early sunlight. She wore a simple dress adorned with beads, each one telling a story of her family, her ancestors, and her life. Her eyes scanned the crowd below, taking in every detail. She noticed the warriors showing off, lifting heavy stones, swinging weapons, and shouting challenges. They hoped to impress her, to show their strength and bravery, but Naeli's gaze remained steady. She felt no attraction to empty gestures or loud displays. Her heart was calm, yet alert, like a hawk watching over the land, waiting for something it could not yet name. As the day progressed, the sounds of celebration grew louder. Drums beat a steady rhythm, and dancers moved gracefully to the music, their movements echoing the stories of the ancestors. Children laughed and chased each other, while elders shared wisdom and guidance with the younger members of the tribe. Naeli moved among them for a while, greeting friends and exchanging kind words, yet her mind remained elsewhere. She felt a sense of anticipation, a quiet stirring deep inside her, as though the wind itself carried a message meant only for her. Then, just as the sun reached its highest point, a figure appeared at the edge of the gathering. He was not a warrior, nor did he display any signs of great wealth or skill. He was a cattle herder, coming from distant lands to trade his animals and goods with the village. His clothes were simple, worn from travel, and his hands were rough from work. Yet there was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet confidence, a steady gaze, and a calm presence that immediately drew attention. Naeli noticed him instantly. There was no need for him to shout or show off. He moved with purpose but without arrogance, his eyes observing the village and its people with respect. She felt a pull, a sudden curiosity that she had never felt with any of the warriors. Something about him was different, something that spoke to her heart rather than her eyes. She watched as he approached, nodding politely to the elders and offering a smile to the children who ran past him. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Naeli felt her pulse quicken, though she did not understand why. She had rejected so many before, yet this stranger, this quiet man, held her attention in a way no one else ever had. He carried no weapon to impress, no song to flatter, and yet his presence was stronger than any display of strength she had witnessed. He was honest and grounded, connected to the land and to the simple truths of life, and that groundedness spoke to her in a way she could not ignore. Curiosity and caution warred within her. Naeli had always been careful with her heart. She had learned to read people, to sense intentions, and to protect herself from disappointment. But something about this man was different. He did not seek to conquer or claim, and that made her feel safe in a way that was new and unfamiliar. She found herself stepping closer, not with boldness or challenge, but with quiet interest, wanting to see who he truly was. As she approached, he looked up and their eyes met. There was a moment of recognition, though they had never met. It was a glance filled with understanding, as if each could see the other's spirit, raw and unguarded. Naeli felt a strange sense of comfort and excitement all at once. She had waited for this, though she did not know it until now. And though she had never allowed herself to be swayed by others, she felt the stirrings of a connection she could not yet name. The village continued its celebration around them, but Naeli's world seemed to narrow. All the noise, all the movements faded into the background. Her attention was fully on him, on the stranger who had arrived quietly and yet made such a profound impact on her heart. She did not yet speak, did not yet move closer, but the bond between them began to form in silence, in the unspoken understanding that had passed between their eyes. It was a feeling she had never experienced. Naeli, who had stood firm against the advances of 100 warriors, felt a gentle tug toward this man who carried no weapons, wore no armor, and sought no attention. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, yet she sensed a depth and honesty that resonated with her own spirit. And for the first time, Naeli felt that perhaps her heart had found something worth considering, a companion not for power or pride, but for shared respect and understanding, someone whose strength was measured not by display but by character. As the sun continued to climb, Naeli lingered on the hill, watching the stranger among her people. She did not yet speak, did not yet reveal the stirrings of her heart, but she knew that her life had shifted in that quiet moment. The air around her felt charged, alive with possibility. She had rejected so many before, and yet she did not feel regret or doubt. Instead, there was hope, a fragile, exciting hope, that perhaps she had finally met someone who could walk beside her, not as a conqueror, but as a companion who understood the essence of her being. And so Naeli stood there, the wind teasing her hair, her heart alert and open for the first time in years. She watched him, the stranger who had come quietly and changed everything, unaware that he had already begun to leave a mark on her soul. The story of her life had been one of courage, independence, and careful choice, and now a new chapter seemed to be beginning, one filled with curiosity, respect, and the faint, thrilling possibility of love. The sun had climbed higher into the sky, and the village was alive with movement and laughter. Drums beat steadily in rhythm, calling everyone to celebrate the bounty of the hunt. The air smelled of smoke, cooked meats, and the faint perfume of desert flowers that had begun to bloom after the morning dew. Naomi walked slowly through the crowd, her eyes scanning faces, yet they kept returning to the quiet stranger who had appeared earlier. He had moved among the villagers with careful steps, polite nods, and a soft, attentive gaze. He did not seek attention, but somehow he had drawn her full focus. The young cattle herder, Tomas, adjusted the leather strap of his bag as he offered a small, respectful greeting to an elder who was teaching children how to carve simple symbols in soft clay. His movements were unhurried but confident. He had traveled many miles across dry plains and rocky paths to reach this village, carrying not just his cattle but the hope of trading goods and forming connections. To many he appeared ordinary, a simple man of the land, yet there was an aura about him, a sense of honesty and reliability that could not be faked. Naomi found herself moving closer, weaving through clusters of villagers, children laughing and running past her feet. She watched as Tomas spoke softly to the elders, explaining how he had come to trade. The elders listened carefully, nodding, appreciating his humility and respect. Naomi noticed how patiently he answered their questions, never boasting of his work or wealth. There was a steadiness in him that intrigued her, a calmness that contrasted sharply with the loud and often boastful warriors who had tried and failed to impress her over the years. For the first time, Naomi felt curiosity mingled with something deeper. She had always been careful with her heart, refusing to yield to flattery or empty gestures. She had watched warriors flaunt their strength, their weapons, and their daring, yet she had never been moved by any of it. Tomas, however, did not seek to move her. He did not try to impress her or win her favor, and that lack of pretense made her heart stir. It was as though he had arrived in her life unannounced, yet exactly when he was meant to. She lingered at the edge of the gathering, pretending to examine the offerings laid out for trade while she quietly observed him. Tomas was arranging the small items he had brought, dried meats, fresh herbs, and a few handcrafted tools. He smiled politely at anyone who approached and answered questions honestly and directly. Naomi's eyes followed him as he bent to help a young child lift a heavy basket of grain, and she noticed the careful, gentle way he guided the child without condescension. It was a small gesture, yet it spoke volumes about his character. Other villagers began to notice Naomi's attention on the stranger. Some whispered among themselves, curious why she, known for her fierce independence, would be so focused on an outsider who carried no weapons and had no reputation as a warrior. Naomi ignored them. Her thoughts were fixed solely on the man who seemed so different from anyone she had ever met. There was no rush in his movements, no false show of power. Instead, there was a quiet dignity, a sense of purpose that resonated with her own love of freedom and respect for life. Tomas glanced up, sensing her gaze, and their eyes met. There was a brief, unspoken recognition in that glance, a silent understanding that passed between them. It was not a dramatic moment of fireworks or loud declarations, but a subtle, profound connection that both felt immediately. Naomi's pulse quickened slightly, not with fear but with anticipation. She had never met someone who could evoke such a feeling without words, without force, without ceremony. And yet here it was, a quiet spark that promised something new and remarkable. She decided to approach him, her steps cautious but deliberate. As she drew near, Tomas turned to greet her, offering a small, respectful bow. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm and warm. "I am Tomas. I have come to trade my cattle and goods with your village. It is an honor to meet you." His words were simple, yet there was a sincerity in his tone that made Naomi feel immediately at ease. "I am Naomi," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "Welcome to our village. It is not often we have visitors from so far away." She studied him carefully, noticing the faint dust on his boots from travel, the sun-tanned skin on his arms, and the thoughtful expression in his eyes. There was no arrogance, no false bravado, only a man who had walked far and now stood with honesty before her. They began to talk quietly, walking together along the edge of the gathering. Naeli asked about his journey, about the lands he had traveled, and about the cattle he tended. Tomas spoke of his work with care, describing the challenges of long treks across dry plains, the responsibility of tending animals, and the satisfaction of a day well spent. He spoke plainly, without exaggeration, yet his words painted vivid pictures of life far beyond the village. Naeli listened intently, fascinated by the simplicity and dedication in his life, so unlike the flashy displays of the warriors who had once sought her hand. As they walked, they shared small laughs over minor mishaps during his travels, a stubborn mule, a sudden storm, a lost path in the mountains. Naeli found herself drawn to his ability to remain calm, to approach problems with patience and reason rather than anger or pride. It was a kind of strength she admired deeply, a strength that did not require weapons or loud declarations. Tomas noticed her smiles and subtle gestures, and he too felt the pull of something unfamiliar yet compelling. Throughout the day, they remained near each other, their conversation flowing easily. Other villagers watched with curiosity and admiration. Tomas treated Naeli with respect, never trying to dominate the conversation or demand her attention. Naeli responded in kind, cautious but open, intrigued by this quiet man who had entered her life without fanfare. The connection between them was subtle but growing, like a fire slowly kindling beneath dry leaves, promising warmth and light if nurtured. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold, Naeli and Tomas paused near a small stream that ran at the edge of the village. They watched the reflection of the sky in the water, the ripples carrying the colors of the sunset. In that quiet moment, words were no longer necessary. The bond that had begun with a glance grew stronger, a shared understanding that they were both searching for something deeper than appearances or reputation. Naeli realized that for the first time in her life, she had encountered someone who did not try to win her heart through display or flattery, yet had captured her attention completely. She felt a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and cautious hope. This man, so different from the hundreds of warriors she had rejected, seemed to embody the qualities she had always sought: honesty, strength of character, respect for others, and a quiet confidence that did not need to be proven. Tomas, for his part, felt a similar pull. He had traveled far, but he had never expected to encounter someone like Naeli, a woman strong, intelligent, and independent, whose spirit was unyielding yet approachable. He was captivated not only by her beauty but by her courage and the depth in her eyes. He recognized a kindred spirit, someone who could understand and respect his life, just as he respected hers. As the evening settled over the village, and the drums grew softer with the fading of the day's celebration, Naeli and Tomas stood together, still silent but fully aware of each other's presence. The wind stirred gently, carrying the sense of the land and the distant sounds of wildlife returning to the desert night. In that quiet, shared moment, a connection had been formed, one that promised challenges, discovery, and perhaps even the beginnings of love. Naeli's heart, which had remained steadfast against the advances of 100 warriors, now felt something unfamiliar yet compelling. She had seen many try to impress her, to claim her favor, yet none had touched her soul in the way this quiet cattle herder had. And though the story of their lives was only beginning, she sensed that her choice, always careful, always deliberate, might finally be leading her toward something extraordinary. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Naeli turned to Tomas and spoke softly, almost to herself. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met." It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of recognition, the acknowledgement that her heart had found a spark worth exploring. Tomas nodded gently, understanding that words were not always necessary, that sometimes the quiet truth of presence and respect said more than any display or claim. The night descended fully, wrapping the village in calm and quiet. Nayeli returned to her home, but her thoughts lingered on the stranger who had entered her life with no fanfare, no demands, yet with an honesty that had begun to touch her heart. Tomas settled near his small camp at the edge of the village, thinking of the young woman whose spirit was as fierce as the desert sun, and whose gaze had already left an impression he could not forget. And so, under the blanket of stars, the seeds of a connection had been planted, one that promised patience, understanding, and the slow, careful growth of something rare and meaningful. Nayeli, who had rejected so many, had begun to notice the possibility of a bond that was deeper than words, stronger than displays of power, and more enduring than fleeting admiration. The day had brought her not just the sight of a stranger, but the stirring of hope, curiosity, and the quiet thrill of discovering a kindred spirit. The following days passed in a rhythm that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. Life in the village continued as usual, with the sun rising over the desert and setting in a blaze of color each evening. Children played in the dusty paths, elders shared wisdom under the shade of broad trees, and the sounds of animals, cattle, horses, and the occasional coyote, filled the air. Yet for Nayeli, the presence of Tomas added a layer of excitement and anticipation she had never experienced before. Each morning, she would rise early to help with chores, gathering water from the stream, tending small patches of plants, and assisting her family with daily tasks. Her mind, however, often wandered to the quiet cattle herder who had arrived so unexpectedly. She thought of the way he had treated the villagers with respect, his calm patience, and the honesty in his voice when he spoke. There was no show, no attempt to impress, yet every small act he performed seemed meaningful. Tomas, too, began to integrate into the village life slowly but thoughtfully. He helped wherever he could, assisting elders with carrying supplies, tending his cattle, and learning the ways of the community. Nayeli watched him quietly at first, noting the care in his movements, the gentle way he spoke to children, and the way he always made an effort to understand before acting. It was a kind of strength that did not demand attention, and Nayeli found herself admiring it more with each passing day. One afternoon, Nayeli found herself walking toward the edge of the village, where Tomas had set up a small area for his cattle. The animals were calm and well cared for, a reflection of the patience and dedication of their herder. Tomas noticed her approach and smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, Nayeli," he said. "I hope your day has been kind to you." "It has been," she replied, her voice soft. "And yours?" He nodded. "Busy, as always, but good. The land provides what it can, and we must do our best to care for it." Nayeli found herself smiling at the simplicity of his answer. There was no bragging, no attempt to impress her with tales of distant lands or daring feats. He spoke of the land and the cattle with a respect and honesty that touched her deeply. She realized that she was beginning to value these quiet moments with him more than any loud display of skill or strength she had ever witnessed. They walked together among the cattle, observing their movements and ensuring each animal was healthy. Nayeli was surprised at how natural it felt to be by his side. She had spent much of her life relying on her own strength, making decisions for herself and rejecting the advances of those who sought her favor. Yet with Tomas, there was no pressure, no need to prove anything. She could simply exist alongside him, and it felt right. As the day moved on, they found themselves sitting beneath a large mesquite tree, seeking shade from the heat of the sun. The branches swayed gently in the wind, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across their faces. Tomas pulled a small piece of bread from his bag and offered it to her. "It is simple, but it is the best I could bring from my travels," he said humbly. Naeli accepted it with a nod and a small smile. "It is more than enough," she replied. She studied him as he ate, noticing the lines on his face formed not by age but by experience, hard work and care. She realized that the quiet strength she had admired in him was reflected not just in his actions, but in the way he viewed the world, with patience, humility, and respect for life. They spoke at length that afternoon, sharing stories of their pasts. Tomas spoke of his family, of long journeys across plains and mountains, of the lessons he had learned while tending cattle and surviving the harsh realities of life. Naeli listened intently, offering small glimpses of her own life in return. She told him of her village, the skills she had learned, the challenges she had faced, and the dreams she held for the future. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, painting the desert in deep oranges and reds, Naeli felt a warmth in her chest she could not ignore. She realized that she had begun to trust him, not just as a companion in conversation, but as someone who could understand and respect the core of who she was. For the first time, she felt that she did not have to hide her spirit or her strength. She could be herself, fully and without fear, and he would not only accept it but appreciate it. The connection between them grew with each passing day. They shared small tasks, helping villagers with chores, tending cattle together, and exploring the surrounding desert. Each moment, though simple, carried significance. Naeli found herself noticing the way Tomas' eyes followed her movements with attention and care, the gentle encouragement in his voice, and the quiet laughter that came so easily when they shared stories. One evening, as the sky shifted from gold to deep purple, Tomas suggested they walk to a nearby hill to watch the sunset. Naeli agreed, and together they climbed the gentle slope, the wind carrying the scent of the desert and the sound of distant birds returning to their nests. They reached the top just as the last rays of sunlight stretched across the horizon, painting the land in a breathtaking array of colors. They stood side by side, silent at first, taking in the beauty of the moment. Naeli felt a sense of peace she had not known before, as though the world had narrowed to this hilltop, this moment, and the presence of Tomas beside her. She realized that her heart, which had remained steadfast against the advances of countless warriors, was beginning to recognize something rare, a connection that was based not on power or appearance, but on understanding, respect, and shared values. Finally, she turned to him, her eyes meeting his in a gaze that carried both curiosity and recognition. "Tomas," she began softly, "I do not understand how it happened, but I feel as if I have known you longer than I could possibly have. Your words, your actions, they make sense to me in a way that no one else ever has." Tomas looked at her, his expression calm yet tender. "Naeli," he replied, "I feel the same. It is as if the land itself guided me here to this village to meet you. I do not know what the future holds, but I know that I wish to walk it alongside you if you will allow me." Her heart swelled with emotion, a mix of joy, relief, and the quiet thrill of recognition. She had waited patiently, standing firm against hundreds who sought her favor, and now she understood that her patience had led her to this moment. She did not need grand gestures or displays of skill. All she needed was someone who saw her truly and valued her spirit. Naeli stepped closer to him, the warm wind playing with her hair. She lowered her voice to a whisper, a secret shared only between the two of them. "You are mine." The words were soft, yet they carried the weight of recognition and choice. It was not a claim of possession, but a declaration of her heart's decision. She had found in him someone who could match her spirit, respect her independence, and walk beside her as an equal. Tomas reached out and took her hand gently, his touch both steady and reassuring. "And you are mine," he replied, understanding the meaning behind her words. In that moment, a bond was forged, a connection built on trust, respect, and the first stirrings of love. The desert around them seemed to hold its breath, as if the land itself recognized the significance of their union. As the sun disappeared completely below the horizon, leaving the sky painted with stars, they remained on the hill, holding hands and speaking in soft tones. They shared dreams and hopes, spoke of the challenges they might face, and acknowledged the uncertainty of the future. Yet despite the unknowns, they felt a sense of certainty in their connection, a quiet understanding that they had found something rare and meaningful. When they finally returned to the village, the night was calm and still. Villagers had begun to settle into their homes, the fires dimming, and the sounds of the desert night taking over. Naeli and Tomas walked slowly, side by side, each step reinforcing the bond that had begun to grow between them. Naeli felt a mixture of exhilaration and serenity. She had faced countless suitors and challenges, yet in the quiet presence of Tomas, she had discovered something far more valuable than admiration or attention. She had discovered understanding, respect, and the possibility of love that was both gentle and strong. Over the next days, their connection deepened. They spoke freely, shared tasks, and learned about each other's strengths and weaknesses. Tomas admired Naeli's courage and independence, while she admired his patience, humility, and steady character. Each moment together built a foundation that promised a lasting and meaningful relationship, one that could withstand the challenges of life in the harsh desert and beyond. Naeli realized that the choice she had made to speak her heart and acknowledge her bond with Tomas was a turning point in her life. She had rejected many before, yet she had never felt regret. Instead, she felt a quiet triumph, the triumph of patience, discernment, and the courage to follow her heart when it recognized something truly valuable. And so, as the stars shone brightly above, Naeli and Tomas sat together, talking softly and sharing quiet laughter. The desert night surrounded them, vast and endless, yet in that moment the world seemed to shrink to the two of them. They had discovered each other, not through grand gestures or bold claims, but through honesty, respect, and the gentle unfolding of hearts that had long waited for something real. In that quiet, unassuming way, love had found its beginning. Life in the village continued, but the arrival of Tomas and his growing closeness with Naeli did not go unnoticed. Some villagers whispered in quiet corners, curious and cautious about the relationship that was forming. Naeli, who had long been admired for her strength and independence, now seemed to have chosen someone unexpected, a simple cattle herder, not a warrior or a man of renown. Some elders were concerned, not out of disapproval, but out of worry for the unknown. Tomas was from another land, and though he treated everyone with respect, he was still an outsider in their tight-knit community. At first, Naeli noticed the wary glances and quiet murmurs. The whispers of neighbors and friends sometimes made her uneasy, but she found comfort in Tomas' calm presence. He never argued or tried to defend himself aggressively. Instead, he treated the villagers with patience, understanding, and continued respect, showing that his intentions were honest and sincere. Naeli admired this about him. It was not strength measured by the sword or loud words, but by character and consistency. One morning, Naeli and Tomas woke early to tend the cattle together. The sky was painted with soft oranges and purples as the sun slowly rose, and a gentle wind brushed over the plains. As they guided the animals to fresh grazing areas, Naeli spoke of her worries. "Some people look at us strangely," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of concern. "They do not yet understand you, Tomas, or why my heart has chosen you." Tomas smiled gently. "I do not need them to understand me, Naeli," he replied. "I only need to be true to who I am and to respect you. If they see that in time, they will understand. Some things take patience." His words reassured her, and she felt a warmth in her chest, a deep appreciation for his steady heart and wise understanding. That very afternoon, a small crisis arose that tested both of them. One of Tomas' cattle wandered too far, driven by a sudden gust of wind that frightened the herd. Naeli noticed immediately and shouted a warning, running across the open plain to help him gather the animals. Tomas followed quickly, his voice calm yet commanding as he called the cattle back. Together, they worked seamlessly, guiding the frightened animals back to safety. Naeli was impressed not by his speed or strength, but by his calm approach, the way he never panicked and managed the situation with patience. The villagers, who had watched from afar, began to take notice. They saw how the two worked together, complementing each other's strengths. Naeli's courage and skill in the open plains combined perfectly with Tomas' steady mind and careful planning. The incident became a quiet lesson for the community. That strength comes not only from physical power or display, but from understanding, teamwork, and character. Days turned into weeks, and life brought new challenges. A sudden storm swept across the plains, bringing strong winds, rain, and the threat of flooding. The river near the village began to swell, and livestock were at risk. Naeli and Tomas worked tirelessly alongside the villagers, reinforcing pens, guiding animals to higher ground, and helping families secure their homes. Their combined effort, determination, and calm leadership impressed many. Those who had doubted Tomas' presence or questioned Naeli's choice began to see the wisdom in their bond. During one particularly difficult moment, Tomas noticed a young child struggling to move a heavy basket of food to safety. Without hesitation, he rushed forward and lifted the basket with ease, handing it to Naeli, who guided the child to a safe area. "Thank you," Naeli said, her eyes reflecting gratitude and admiration. "You always seem to know what needs to be done, and you do it without seeking praise." Tomas shook his head, smiling humbly. "I do not seek praise, I do what I can, and I have someone I trust beside me making every task easier," he replied, glancing at her with gentle affection. Naeli felt her heart stir. She realized that their bond was not just about shared feelings, but about shared action, working together through trials, supporting each other, and earning trust through deeds rather than words. As the storm passed and the village began to recover, the elders called a meeting. They praised the efforts of everyone, but they especially acknowledged Naeli and Tomas. "You have shown courage, wisdom, and care for the people and the land," said one elder. "Strength is not only measured by the sword or by boastful acts, but by how one stands in the face of challenge and how one protects the people around them." The recognition warmed Naeli's heart. She had long wondered if her choice would be accepted, and now she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that their combined actions had proven the value of trust, respect, and partnership. In the evenings after the work was done, Naeli and Tomas often sat beneath the stars, reflecting on the day. They spoke quietly about their experiences, sharing what they had learned, what had frightened them, and what had brought them joy. Each conversation deepened their understanding of one another. Naeli admired his courage, not the kind that fought with weapons, but the kind that remained steadfast under pressure and offered support to those in need. Tomas admired her independence and intelligence, the way she made decisions thoughtfully and stood firm in her beliefs. One evening, while the desert glowed under a silver moon, Naeli reflected on how far they had come. They had faced storms, challenges, and the doubts of others, yet their bond had only grown stronger. She realized that she trusted him completely, not blindly, but with a confidence earned through shared experience, honesty, and integrity. She knew that, together, they could face whatever the future held. Even the warriors who had once sought her hand began to see the change. Though they had been rejected many times before, they now understood that Naeli had chosen not just a companion, but a man of character who complemented her spirit. Some approached Tomas cautiously, testing his intentions, but he answered each inquiry with respect and honesty, earning their admiration over time. Naeli observed quietly, pleased that he remained true to himself and to her, never needing to boast or prove himself. During these days, small acts of care strengthened their connection further. Tomas would bring fresh water for her when she worked in the fields, and Naeli would show him the best paths through the desert when moving cattle. They learned each other's habits, anticipating needs and gestures without words. It was in these quiet moments that their bond deepened, the trust, the understanding, and the shared respect creating a foundation far stronger than any outward display could provide. As the seasons changed, their lives intertwined further. They shared meals, helped with village tasks, and spent time learning about each other's worlds. Tomas taught Naeli some techniques he used in cattle herding, and she taught him ways to track animals and read the land. Each lesson strengthened their partnership, showing that they were not just companions in emotion, but in action as well. Their teamwork became evident to all, demonstrating a harmony between two people that had been carefully nurtured through shared effort, patience, and mutual respect. One day, while repairing fences that had been damaged by a recent windstorm, Tomas looked at Naeli and said, "We have faced much together already, yet I feel as if there is so much more ahead. I am grateful to have you beside me." Naeli smiled, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and affection. "And I am grateful for you," she replied. "You have shown me that strength is not only in power, but in patience, understanding, and loyalty. I have never felt such certainty in my heart before." Their lives were not without small hardships, but the trials they faced only reinforced their bond. Through wind, rain, and the everyday challenges of village life, they discovered the depth of their connection. Each obstacle they overcame together became a thread woven into the fabric of their partnership. Naeli, who had once stood alone against the advances of 100 warriors, now stood confidently with Tomas, facing life as a team. Evenings often brought quiet reflection. Beneath the vast sky filled with stars, they would sit together, holding hands and speaking softly. The desert night was calm, and the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees seemed to echo their growing understanding. Naeli realized that love could be quiet, gentle, and strong all at once. It was not about grand gestures, but about steady presence, respect, and shared experience. Tomas understood her in ways no one else ever had, and she in turn appreciated his calm courage and unwavering integrity. And so, through storms, challenges, and the cautious acceptance of others, Naeli and Tomas' bond grew stronger. They had learned that life together would not always be easy, but it would be honest, meaningful, and full of respect. Their connection had become a quiet but undeniable force, proving that true partnership is built on trust, shared effort, and the courage to face the world together. As they prepared for the coming seasons, the village began to accept their union more fully. The elders saw the wisdom in Naeli's choice, and even the warriors who had once sought her hand recognized the strength of the partnership she had forged. Naeli and Tomas had shown that love and respect, combined with patience and perseverance, could overcome doubts, challenges, and the unknown. And as the stars shone brightly over the desert, they stood side by side, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Their hearts were intertwined, their spirits aligned, and their bond had been forged through trials, courage, and unwavering honesty. Naeli had rejected many, yet in Tomas, she had found not only a companion but a true partner, someone who would walk beside her, through storms and sunshine alike, with respect, understanding, and the quiet strength of love. The seasons passed, and the desert continued its endless rhythm of sun, wind, and starry nights. Naeli and Tomas had settled into a life that was simple in appearance but rich in meaning. Their bond, forged through patience, trust, and shared trials, had grown stronger with every passing day. The villagers had long since recognized the strength of their partnership. Some who had been skeptical now admired them, seeing that true respect, understanding, and courage were more powerful than displays of skill or wealth. Naeli and Tomas worked side by side each morning, tending to the cattle and assisting the villagers with daily tasks. The land, harsh and demanding, required constant attention, yet they faced each challenge together. Naeli had always been independent, but she discovered in Tomas a partner who complemented her strengths rather than overshadowed them. Together, they planned the herding routes, repaired fences, and ensured that their animals were safe and healthy. Tomas' steady mind and careful observation paired perfectly with Naeli's energy, bravery, and skill, creating a team that was admired by all who saw them work. One afternoon, as the sun climbed high in the sky, casting golden light across the plains, Naeli and Tomas walked together to check on the farthest grazing herd. The air was dry and warm, and the grass rustled gently in the wind. Naeli noticed how Tomas moved quietly, observing the land, listening to the sounds of the cattle and predicting their needs. She admired his calm, steady approach and felt a deep sense of gratitude that he had entered her life. He was not a man of boast or show, yet his presence brought a sense of security and comfort unlike any she had ever known. As they reached the edge of the grazing area, they noticed a young calf separated from its mother, frightened and bleeding. Naeli immediately ran forward, her heart racing with concern. Tomas followed closely, speaking softly to the calf in a gentle voice. Together, they guided it back to the herd. Naeli marveled not only at his skill in handling the animal, but at the care and compassion he showed. There was no rush, no frustration, only patience and understanding. She realized that true strength was measured not by what one could conquer, but by what one could nurture. That evening, after returning to the village, Naeli and Tomas sat beneath the wide sky, now painted with stars that glimmered like scattered jewels. The desert was quiet except for the distant sounds of the cattle and the occasional call of a night bird. Naeli leaned against Tomas, feeling a sense of contentment and peace that she had never known before. "I have never imagined life could feel like this," she said softly. "Not just safe, but meaningful, full of purpose and shared joy." Tomas smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I have traveled many miles and faced many hardships," he said, "yet I have never felt truly at home until now. With you, Naeli, I feel that all the effort, all the journeys have led me here. We are stronger together than we could ever be apart." Their relationship became an example for the village. Young men and women watched the way they interacted, not with displays of competition or pride, but with mutual respect, understanding, and care. Children followed them as they worked, learning lessons of compassion, patience, and cooperation. Naeli and Tomas' bond showed that love was not just about feelings, but about consistent action, support, and shared responsibility. Their life became a quiet lesson for all who witnessed it, a model of partnership that inspired trust and admiration. As months turned to years, Naeli and Tomas continued to grow together. They learned from each other, laughed together, and faced small and large challenges side by side. There were moments of frustration, as there are in every life, but these moments only served to strengthen their connection. They had learned to communicate openly, to respect each other's opinions, and to compromise without losing their individuality. Naeli, who had once been fiercely independent, discovered that true partnership did not mean losing her freedom. It meant gaining a companion who respected it. Tomas, who had spent much of his life traveling alone, discovered that sharing life with someone like Naeli brought joy, strength, and balance that he had never experienced. One spring, the village celebrated a successful harvest. The elders called for a gathering, and everyone came together in song, dance, and shared meals. Naeli and Tomas were at the center of the celebration, not because they demanded attention, but because their actions over the years had earned the respect and admiration of the entire community. They had proven that love built on respect and understanding could endure, flourish, and inspire others. During the festivities, Nayeli stood quietly watching Tomas laugh and share stories with the children. Her heart swelled with affection. She remembered the first time she had seen him, the quiet man who had arrived unexpectedly and spoken with honesty and humility. She had rejected countless warriors, yet in him, she had found someone whose spirit matched her own, whose presence brought peace and joy rather than tension or challenge. That quiet recognition, that whispered declaration of "you are mine," had been the beginning of a life full of meaning. Tomas noticed her watching and walked over, taking her hand gently. "You are thinking," he said, smiling softly. "I am," Nayeli admitted. "I am thinking of how far we have come and how our lives have changed. You have taught me so much about patience, kindness, and trust. I never imagined that love could be like this, quiet, steady, and yet so strong. And you have taught me courage, independence, and the value of seeing the world with both heart and mind," Tomas replied. "We have grown together, Nayeli, and I hope we will continue to grow for all the days to come." Their words were simple, yet they carried the depth of years of shared experience, challenges faced, and understanding earned. They realized that love was not always dramatic or loud. It was built slowly, with care, trust, and respect. Each shared task, each gentle word, each moment of patience had contributed to a life that was rich and meaningful. Over the following years, Nayeli and Tomas raised a family. Their children grew strong and curious, learning from both parents the lessons of courage, kindness, and respect for the land. The village continued its daily life, and the story of Nayeli and Tomas became a quiet legend, an example of what could happen when hearts met honestly and spirits aligned. Their love was celebrated not in grand displays but in the way they lived, through care, patience, shared responsibility, and unwavering respect. Even as time passed and their hair began to show streaks of gray, their bond remained unshaken. They continued to work together, explore the land, and teach the next generation. Nayeli's heart, once cautious and reserved after rejecting 100 warriors, remained full and open, guided by trust, understanding, and the quiet strength she had found in Tomas. He remained steadfast, patient, and loving, proving every day that true love was more than passion. It was constancy, partnership, and unwavering respect. In quiet moments, they would sit together under the vast sky, watching the stars, listening to the gentle rustle of the desert, and reflecting on the life they had built. Nayeli sometimes whispered softly to Tomas, "You are mine," and he would answer in kind, each word a reaffirmation of the bond that had begun so unexpectedly, with no fanfare, and had grown into something enduring and beautiful. Their story became a part of the village's memory. Elders would tell children about Nayeli, the young woman who had rejected 100 warriors but found her equal in a quiet cattle herder. They spoke of courage, patience, respect, and the wisdom of following one's heart while remaining true to oneself. The tale was told not as a romance alone, but as a story of character, partnership, and the power of love rooted in trust and understanding. Through every season, every challenge, and every joyful day, Nayeli and Tomas lived side by side, their lives intertwined in a way that was both practical and profound. They had faced storms together, guided cattle across harsh plains, and navigated the complexities of village life. Each trial strengthened their bond, each shared success deepened their trust, and each quiet moment of connection reminded them of the rare gift they had found in one another. And so, their days passed, rich in meaning, full of love, and grounded in respect. The desert stretched endlessly around them, yet within that vast expanse, Nayeli and Tomas had found their home in each other. Their love, born quietly and carefully, had grown stronger than any challenge, more enduring than any doubt, and more inspiring than any display of power. They had discovered that true partnership is not measured by grand gestures, but by the steady, patient, and honest devotion to one another through life's trials and joys. The story of Naeli and Tomas became timeless, a legend whispered from one generation to the next. It was a story of courage, independence, patience, and the profound strength that comes from understanding, respect, and love. And every time the stars shone bright above the desert, one could imagine the two of them sitting beneath the sky, hands intertwined, hearts full, and spirits at peace, proof that love, when built on truth and trust, can endure forever.